Welcome, everybody. The craziness of the pandemic continues, and I wanted to talk about something today that has become a pattern in my work. And in the world of counseling, we're always looking for patterns, and some of them are very easy to see in regards to clients come in, and some are a little disparate and they're not as tight together. But there's been a very interesting, I'd say, in the last 6 months or even maybe 8 months, of the number of couples that are coming to me that are in constant arguments. They're struggling. It can be the littlest thing that turns into World War III, and they're having a really, really hard time getting it together. Now, the pressures of the pandemic, of course, don't help. The isolation, the fear of being sick. Maybe you have different opinions on masks and vaccines. Maybe you have different opinions on politics. Maybe you have different opinions on how to raise kids during the pandemic. But it all comes down to this. We have seen a pattern over the last 8 months that I've never seen in 42 years. The number of couples coming to us in complete arguments, just blowouts on a regular basis, is I've never seen it. I've just never seen it at this level. We can't blame the pandemic for everything, but we can say that it has a role here. So, one of the greatest things that we need to remember is that during challenging times, the greatest tool to have is adaptability to change. So when I tell you today what we do with couples who are in that place and you say, oh my God, that's wrong, it would never work for me, this is where I'm going to ask you to open your mind. During the pandemic, we have to be incredibly open-minded to do things differently maybe than we've done before. So why are so many couples starting to sleep alone? Why is that going on? Well, first of all, I'll tell you that most couples don't do that until they come in and work with a professional. Whether it's me, a life coach, a therapist, a counselor, it doesn't matter who you're working with as a professional, but most of us don't think of solutions like sleeping in separate rooms when you're constantly arguing. But let me give you a couple examples of why this is important. If you're really struggling, we should be willing to say to our partner, I've got to sleep. I don't care if it's on the couch, in the other room, on the floor, in the other bedroom, whatever it might be, because the energy can become so toxic, so negative. And so when one couple or the other says, I've really got to get some space, I've got to try to get some sleep, we need to allow them to do that. If we don't and we argue and we come up with statements like we're married, we're supposed to always sleep together, we're dating, we're supposed to always sleep together, we live together, we're supposed to always sleep together, that's called attachment, a form of codependency. You see, in challenging times, people have to let go of all of your beliefs and all of your attachment that this is the way it's supposed to be and this is the way it can only be. And I will tell you, the first time over 30 years ago, God, it was probably almost 40 years ago when I advised a couple that was constantly arguing to sleep in separate bedrooms. They thought I was insane. Until 8 weeks later, when we ended our work together, the relationship had been turned around. So we don't want that codependent attachment. We don't want that feeling that, oh my God, I have to be with that person to prove we're a couple. If you're struggling, relax. You may say, hey, listen, let's do this for a week. Let's do this for 2 weeks. Let's do this for 3 weeks. We'll still love each other, still do things together, but we need our space. One of the things I've seen in couples like this is that several times they'll really start to understand that they've needed more personal space for many years. You know how easy it is to get caught up into mass consciousness where people around you say, oh no, you have to stay and sleep in the same bedroom if you want to be considered a loving couple. Let me give you a story. This is really crazy. In 1977, I had a professor at a university, and she was teaching a course on relationships, and she was talking about her and her husband. Now, at that time, that professor was probably about 65 or 70 years of age. And she told a story that blew our mind. She was talking about how they had different beliefs and, they didn't go to bed at the same time. And when they got into arguments, neither of them would sleep. And so listen to this. 30 years prior to her teaching me, her and her husband came to an agreement that Monday through Friday they would sleep separately. They both had very busy careers. They didn't want to have any conflict at night that could interfere with them being fresh for the next day. And then Saturdays and Sundays, they would sleep together. And they found, and as she was the professor on relationships, she said, this is going to go against everything you've probably learned up till now in regards to counseling and relationships, but I want you to be more open-minded. When you leave this course, I don't want you saying, no, that would never work for me. You don't know if it'll work until you try it, right? So anyway, let's think about this. Break that codependent attachment to your partner. Allow them the space, the personal space. What you might find is that personal space is needed every day of the week. You also might find that you say to your partner, before I go to bed, I'm going to go into a private room and journal or read. Like, personal space time is so important, especially during the pandemic when there's so much stress. If you want more tips on relationships and how to move through the pandemic easier, grab our new book, Helping Americans Heal, The Ultimate Guide to Healing During These Challenging Times. You can get it at Amazon. You can get it in a soft cover or a Kindle. My Lord, the Kindle is $4.99. The soft cover is $14.99. Extremely inexpensive. Hundreds of tips on relationships, attitude, goal achievement, addiction recovery, insomnia, anxiety, depression, everything that we're going through during the pandemic, we answer in the book. So, but going back to relationships, be open-minded. Give yourself time to let the emotions go down. When you're in that cycle of arguing with your partner, we have labeled it 25 years ago, the adrenaline addiction cycle. And what happens is when you're constantly arguing, adrenaline is being pumped through your body. If you stop and you've had that pattern going, it might only be a few days or a week before that adrenaline withdrawal hits, and then your partner rolls their eyes and you explode, right? So there's a real factor here with the physiology of the body. Let's slow down. Let's become more practical. And if you need any help in your relationship, send me an email at talkdavid.com. You and I can work together and figure this out, okay? Have a beautiful day. Can't wait to get back on here and do more lives for you. I'm David Essel. Talk to you soon.